Welcome to another Apollo Papyrus podcast episode. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. During the pre-interview discussion I had with the interview guest on the previous episode, Catherine Giovanni, she said this about marrying her husband.
Hey, some of us marry for money and some of us marry for food.
Oh, for this episode, my interview guest didn't have to marry anyone for food, as she is the granddaughter of an immigrant to the United States from Italy who founded a pizzeria. Her book, A Story About Pizza, is an historical fiction novel about her grandfather's migration story and, as the title notes, pizza. Her name is Erica D'Arcangelo, and my interview with Erica will follow the teleportation sound. Erica D'Arcangelo, did I pronounce your last name correctly?
Yep, that's exactly right.
Welcome to the Apollo Papyrus podcast.
Thank you.
Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Okay, I'm Erica D'Arcangelo, and I'm the author of A Story About Pizza.
Without spoiling too much of your book, which is called A Story About Pizza, is it fiction or nonfiction, and what's it about?
So it is literary fiction, but it's based on a true story, and it's about my grandfather, who was an Italian immigrant, and he came over from Abruzzo, Italy, and it talks about his journey from the coal mines to his dream of opening a pizzeria.
Why did you decide to write a story about pizza as historical literary fiction and not as a nonfiction memoir biography or as a genre historical fiction?
You know, my grandfather was around, a long time before I was born, and he passed away when I was, just around, I think, 19 years old. And so I wasn't there to witness this firsthand. And so a lot of the information that I got from for the story was from my father and from relatives and just looking at old relics of our pizzeria. And so I had to really piece the story together a little bit. So I didn't want to go completely nonfiction on it in case I had some facts wrong.
What was your grandfather like? And even though I don't think you lived with him, but correct me if I'm wrong, how did your grandfather influence how you are today?
Sure. No, we didn't live with my grandparents. We lived very close by, and we had the family business, so we were together quite a bit. And really what influenced me the most about my grandfather was he was very quiet and he was very soft-spoken, but he was tough as nails and he never gave up, and he always went out of his way to help people and make people feel welcome. And when he saw that someone, maybe didn't have a place or needed help with something, he was the first person who would step up and help that person.
Does a story about pizza, does that actually include your grandfather and other relatives as characters, or did you change names?
So it is my grandfather and his three brothers and his parents, and there's all the same names. And then also my grandmother and some of her family members. So I think pretty much everyone in the book had the same names.
How long did it take you to write a story about pizza?
I was writing the book on and off for about, I'd say, a year and a half, could have even been 2 years. But funny enough, I wrote the entire story. And when I was done with it, I didn't know what to do with it. So I literally just let it sit for 4 months because I wasn't sure what to do with it when I finished writing it.
I would actually advise authors, once they finish like a draft of a book, but not the final draft, to actually let it sit for a while before they go back in and write another draft, because their opinions of what they wrote might not be as good. They might immediately see things they like to edit and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, when I went back through the book, I sat down, I talked to my dad, and there were all these like very specific stories that he told me that I thought, you know what, I really want to incorporate these. And then I noticed every chapter we talked about something that was being cooked or made. And so then I was like, I should incorporate the recipes. So each chapter has a recipe at the end of the chapter.
Now, were all the recipes at the end of each chapter in your book inspired by your family's recipes?
Oh, yeah, they are my family's recipes. They're almost, I think, the exact ones that we had or that the people had in the book, and then they were passed down to us.
What were the easiest and hardest aspects of writing a historical fiction book for you?
The easiest part was just, going through the characters and being really creative. And I think the most difficult part was really making sure that everything flowed and it was in a correct order.
Is your book a story about pizza? Is that self-published, traditionally published, or hybrid published? What was it like getting your book published?
Publishing was an interesting experience because it was the first book that I published, and I researched a lot of different ways, and I ended up doing a self-published book. And I think there's some negatives to it and also some positives to it. Had I done it again, I probably would have done pre-orders and done more press and promotion before my book was released as to after. But I actually have an eight book children's series that is going to be coming out, and I'll probably do pre-orders on that one.
Ooh, yeah. You're doing an 8 book children's book series. Can you give our listeners a bit of a preview of that without spoiling too much of it?
Absolutely. So it is based on this first book that I did, and it's all about Italian culture, but it's from the standpoint of a child. And so it goes through Pietro, who's the main character of my book, and almost like his childhood and different, I guess, cultural things that he learned growing up.
Now, is there an episodic series that's upcoming that's going to be filmed about family-owned pizzas in America? And if so, tell us more about that.
Absolutely. So, this book told one story about pizza, and that was my family's story. And there are 70,000 family-owned pizzerias in the country, and each one of them has a story to tell. And these stories are so beautiful of how these different families came over from different countries, and namely from Italy, and brought their history and their heritage and their recipes and their culture, and they're now sharing that with their customers. And these restaurants are passed down in the family, and I really want to go and tell that story.
What are your favorite things about Italian culture? And have you ever visited the land of your ancestors, Italy?
Sure. So my favorite things about Italian culture would be family and food. I have a big Italian family. I have 4 brothers and sisters and my parents, and we're really close. And we get together, and my dad's a fabulous Italian cook, and he cooks all kinds of delicious food when we're together, and just sitting at the table together and laughing and having a nice meal is like really something that's special to me. And I've actually been to Italy, I think it's been 5 times. And my father took our whole family there, all my siblings. We brought my daughter, and we went for, I think it was 2 weeks a few years ago. And it was really the trip of a lifetime to go as adults. We went to Abruzzo, we saw the land that our family owned there, and we were actually able to visit our relatives there. And it was just a really special experience.
What makes Italian cooking and cuisine unique?
It's so beautiful because with Italian cooking and cuisine, all the different regions have different types of things that are popular. So in one region you may have pesto, and in one region you might have, Parmesan cheese. And it really like depends on where you go throughout Italy, and you're introduced to all this different food that comes from the region, and the ingredients are grown or cultured within the region.
You make a very valid point, because there are a lot of different cultural regions within Italy, and yet Italian cuisine here in the United States often gets portrayed as this monolith.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. A lot of places here, as compared to Italy, well, you do have some places that, you have people who have come over and they bring that over with them, but then you do have like a very general, I guess, Italian food menu here.
Now, your family business is called the Arcs pizza. Where is Diarc's Pizza located, and what is the pizza like there?
So Diarc's Pizza is located in Wimber, Pennsylvania, which is near Pittsburgh, PA. They've been there for about 65 years, and the pizza is delicious. It's my grandfather's pizza. It's his recipe. They still serve the original. It's a 15 slice rectangular pizza made with Parmesan cheese and mozzarella cheese, and it's very, very good.
Erica, thank you for appearing on the Apollo Papyrus podcast. You are an amazing guest, and I'm hungry.
I'm hungry too. Thank you for having me.
It was amazing to interview Erica, but I apologize to everyone that I made hungry while listening to this episode. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to find your writing and reading purpose. Bye for now. Copyright Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited, except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.